Hello everybody on YouTube, this is Super Nintendo, and I've been thinking about something lately. So let's talk about it. This is going to be a deep look analysis video deconstructing why the MCU Spider-Man is not actually a good representation of everyone's favorite webhead. But, in order to get to that, we first need to go over what makes Spider-Man special and what makes him who he is. I'm going to be covering all of MCU Spider-Man's appearances from Captain America Civil War all the way to Spider-Man No Way Home. Originally, I was just going to go from Civil War to Far From Home, but the script was written out before No Way Home came out. That's why No Way Home is getting its own section of the video separate from the others. As you can probably tell from the time card and the length of this video, there's a lot to cover, so let's get on with it.
Alright, let's do this one last time. My name is Peter Parker. I was bitten by a radioactive spider, and for 10 years, I've been the one and only Spider-Man. I'm pretty sure you know the rest.
With great power comes great responsibility.
I saved a bunch of people, fell in love, saved the city, and then I saved the city again, and again, and again, and again. And I did this. We don't really talk about this. Look, I'm a comic book, I'm a cereal, did a Christmas album, I have an excellent theme song, and a so-so popsicle. I mean, I've looked worse, but after everything, I still love being Spider-Man. I mean, who wouldn't? So no matter how many hits I take, I always find a way to come back. Because the only thing standing between this city and oblivion is me. There's only one Spider-Man. And you're looking at him.
Yeah, that's the gist of what makes Spider-Man who he is. So, to get a little bit more in-depth, not a whole lot because otherwise we'd be here all day and this video is long enough as it is, Peter Parker, through the loss of Uncle Ben, learned a very important lesson.
With great power comes great big booty bitches.
No, Kermit, that is not what he said. He learned that with great power, there must also come great responsibility. Something that might shock some of you is this is something that Peter learned himself in the comics, not from Uncle Ben. Peter Parker, since, at least in the good comics, has always tried to deal with relatable human problems, such as paying bills, going to work, having a social life, trying to make his date on time, etc., while dealing with the responsibilities of being a superhero. Life always kicks him every chance it gets. Sometimes this is due to random happenstance, and other times it's through his choices of either being a superhero or having his social life. But life always kicks him in the balls every chance it gets. He goes through relatable problems that everyone, or at least most people, have had to deal with at one point in their lives. Money troubles, asking a girl out, getting kicked out of their apartment because they couldn't pay their rent. You know, stuff like that. And he also struggles with the choices of being a hero. Like, is it okay for him to take just one night off? Just one. But, as Batman put it,
One night always makes the difference.
there's also the fact that Peter, above all else, is his own superhero. He's not someone's sidekick. Even when he is on a team with other heroes, he is his own solid hero. So, now that you're all aware of what Spider-Man is supposed to be, how does the MCU incarnation compare? During his debut film in Captain America Civil War, he was actually pretty close to how Spider-Man is supposed to be. He dumpster dives for parts he needs for various stuff. He clearly lost someone very important to him, but he keeps soldiering on, being a hero and trying to live his best life because...
Look, when you can do the things that I can, but you don't, and then the bad things happen, they happen because of you.
When he gets in the suit, however, we get a glimpse of the type of character he would later become in Homecoming onwards.
Guys, look, I'd love to keep this up, but I've only got one job here today, and I gotta impress Mr. Stark, so I'm really sorry.
But at least, in that introductory scene, he's pretty close to how Spider-Man, Peter Parker, is supposed to be.
Oh, what do we have here? Retro tech, huh? Thrift store? Salvation Army?
The garbage act.
You're a dumpster diver.
Yeah, I can't believe this. I was actually having a really good day today, you know, Mr. Stark. Didn't miss my train. This perfectly good DVD player was just sitting there, and algebra test. Nailed it.
Love it.
I can't go to Germany.
Why?
I got homework.
I'm gonna pretend you didn't say that.
It's important to note, however, that in this movie, it is shown quite clearly that this version of Peter Parker is a big fan of the Avengers in general, not just Tony Stark.
Okay, Captain? Big fan of Spider-Man?
Yeah, we'll talk about it later. Just...
Hey, everyone.
He's not in very much of Civil War. Although, it is important to note that we do not get to see Peter's origin story in Civil War. The typical defense for this is that, well, we got 2 Spider-Man movie series before this that went over Peter's origin. And they both came out fairly recently, enough that most people who are going into Civil War have probably seen either Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man or Andrew Garfield's The Amazing Spider-Man. Either one of those would work fine, but that is the typical defense we get for this. We, at Super Nintendo Enterprises, do agree that we don't need a completely isolated origin story movie for this version of Peter. However, something that is worth discussing is that, as we will see in Homecoming, this version of Peter has a very different life and set of events than most other versions of Spider-Man. So an origin clip, at the very least, would not be out of place to show us what this version of Peter has went through and how different his life is compared to others. This could have been done a variety of different ways, such as doing what Into the Spider-Verse did and just give us a brief recap.
My name is Peter Parker.
My name is Penny Parker.
My name is Peter Parker. I was
bitten
bitten by a radioactive
spider.
pig.
In my universe, it's 1933, and I'm a private eye. I like to drink egg creams, and I like to fight Nazis. A lot.
I'm from New York in the year 3145. I have a psychic link with a spider who lives inside my father's robot. And we're best friends. Forever.
Sometimes I let matches burn down to my fingertips just to feel something, anything.
I'm a photographer for the Daily Beagle. When I'm not poaching around, I'm working like a dog trying to sniff out the latest story. I frolic and I dance and I do this with my pants and my...
enough.
Or, if you didn't want to do that, you could do what the Incredible Hulk 2008 movie did, and show us his origin in the opening credits of the movie. we'll get into some of the differences between this Peter and other versions in a later portion of this deep dive. So let's move on to Spider-Man Homecoming. Peter in this movie has a relatively simple story. He wants to impress Mr. Stark. He wants to be an Avenger. He is dealing with his first crush, Liz Allen, when he eventually stumbles on Vulture and his crew selling weapons, and Peter wants to stop them, not out of a sense of responsibility, but to impress Mr. Stark. Peter in this movie does all kinds of stupid shit that make him seem less like Spider-Man and more like a brain-dead idiot. Keep in mind that Peter in the MCU goes to a school for the intellectually gifted. And if you think I'm lying on this, well, the extended edition of No Way Home makes it very clear they do not go to a normal high school.
So you never noticed he had extraordinary athletic abilities?
It's a science school, so 2 push-ups is extraordinary athletic ability.
Every one of Peter Parker's classmates, including himself, is supposed to be, at least to some degree, a child genius. Or at least, that's how it's supposed to be, but take a look at scenes like this. One of the first things we see him do is make web fluid in class. He's not in the back of the class where him opening a drawer like this would go unnoticed. No, there are people behind him who could very easily see what he is doing. In fact, there are people in the scene who are looking in his general direction just before he makes the web fluid. Maybe you could argue that they are looking at their respective science projects, but there's a thing called peripheral vision. Peripheral vision, as I'm sure many of you are aware, is the ability to see outside your focal point of vision, basically seeing out of the corner of your eye. These people very well could see what Peter is doing, and he's not hiding it in the slightest. Next, we have Peter doing his spider jump in front of some very obvious windows behind him, where anyone could be looking at him. This one is a really simple example, so let's move on. The scene where he goes into an alley and puts on his spider suit takes a ridiculously long amount of time, and considering this is Queens, it's very odd that nobody is walking down the street in either direction, either in front of him or behind him, to see him do this. Spider-Man in a lot of media tends to wear his spider suit under his civilian clothing, seemingly for this reason, so he can spend less time suiting up and more time saving lives. But Peter spends a full 50 seconds just suiting up. It's honestly absurd he hasn't been caught before. Sure, 50 seconds doesn't sound like a whole lot of time, but when you're in a very populated, very busy city like Queens, or New York, or whatever, that's a lot of time that someone could easily pop in and look down the hallway and see you, you know, dressing up in a Spider-Man onesie. As a matter of fact, there are various points in the movie where he honestly could have been caught if anyone in this movie acted like a real person.
So yeah, just call me back. It's Peter Parker.
From YouTube.
I'm not.
You were on the ceiling.
No, I wasn't. Ned, what are you doing in my room?
Man, let me in. You said we're gonna finish a Death Star.
You can't just bust into my room.
That turkey meatloaf recipe is a disaster. Let's go to dinner. Ty, Ned, you want Ty?
Yeah. No, he's got a thing.
A thing to do after.
Okay. Maybe put on some clothes.
The Sokovia Accords were put into place in the
How far can you shoot your webs? Shut up.
to begin regulating.
If I was you, I would stand on the edge of a building and just shoot it as far as I
Shut up, Ned.
Him too?
Yeah, we met. I stole his shield.
Today, my good friend.
Let's skip ahead a little bit to a point where Peter takes a glowy thing, his words, that he took from the Shocker and decides to take it to school where anyone could have seen him brought it to school, and decides to hit the thing with the hammer. This is stupid for a number of reasons. One, we learn in this movie that Earth technology has benefited from using the alien technology from the Avengers movie. Even if Peter doesn't know what it is, I'm sure he could simply look it up on the internet. Two, we later learn that the glowy thing is a bomb, or at least can become a bomb with very simple means. And Peter is striking this thing repeatedly with a hammer.
Oh. Hey, it's like the glowy thing.
That glowy thing is an explosive Chitauri energy core.
Whoa. You mean we've been carrying around a bomb?
It would require radiation to transform it into an explosive state.
Leave a message.
Dad, call me back! The glowy thing's a bomb!
3. The glowy thing is obviously a power source of some kind. Peter himself points this out pretty quickly. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that if something is a battery, especially an alien-looking battery, you shouldn't be hitting it with a hammer. Doing such a thing, even with a normal battery, can cause an explosion. So, Peter is taking something that is basically a super battery, taking it to school where any of his classmates could have seen it, and deciding to hit it repeatedly with a hammer. And even normal batteries explode, or can explode, if you do such a thing. Yeah, no, Peter is freaking retarded in this movie just for this moment alone. The next scene we want to bring up is the scene where it's revealed that Peter hides his web fluid and his spider gear underneath his lockers. By using his super strength, he is able to lift up his lockers so he is able to grab web fluid and his gear. This sounds kinda smart on the surface until you realize there's cameras everywhere in the hallways in schools. It's not really a plot point in the movie, but if you're looking around the different sets, you can see those little round black cameras that a lot of things have nowadays. So yeah, there's no doubt that he's been caught on camera. Another reason why this is really stupid though is, say he was out of web fluid and he desperately needs to get more from his stash underneath his lockers, but the hallways are full for one reason or another. How is he supposed to get to his stash of web fluid in that circumstance? Granted, this is a hypothetical and not a situation that is in the movie or is even super likely to occur. The problem is still there. The problem isn't so much that circumstance, the problem is this is a stupid hiding place. It's very likely that Peter would have to deal with a situation like this at least once. But, you know, as we will see in the later portions of this video, this Peter values keeping his secret identity over saving people. We will get to that. The last thing we're going to bring up in regards to Peter's stupidity in the movie is the various times he could have stopped a villain or a criminal and just doesn't for seemingly no reason. Take the first scene where he tries to actually stop criminals with the crooks in the Avengers masks. He gets in there, all stealthy and quiet, and has a perfect opportunity to web all of them up to a wall and taking away their weapons. Peter is more than fast enough to be able to do that, but instead he decides to pose, make a snappy one-liner instead of doing anything actually productive. As a result of his stupid decision, the bad guys get away, and the deli shop owner gets his shop destroyed and could have easily been killed. This is seemingly forgotten about by the entire rest of the movie as we focus more on Vulture rather than what just went on here. To be fair, in the comics and other movie series, as well as other forms of media, Peter does do stuff like this sometimes, but they don't typically let the villains get away, and typically when they do show up, they at least try to take away their weapons and web them up to a wall. Take this scene from Spider-Man PS4, for example.
Get him!
Morning, guys! Who's ready for their hot, fresh cup of bodily harm?
Peter shows up on the scene, none of the villains see or hear him, and all we see, at first, is him taking away the weapons of various guards, showing up, making a joke, and immediately going to kick ass. This is easily more than what this Peter did, but it's something that he could have done. And I don't want to hear the excuse that, oh, well, this Peter is new to his career and is inexperienced, because, one, he's been Spider-Man at this point for about 8 months. 2, this isn't a problem with experience. This is a problem with him being stupid. This isn't a thing of inexperience. Inexperience would imply that he either doesn't have full control of his powers, or is still getting used to the superhero thing, or whatever. But even, like, Spectacular Spider-Man, who only had his powers for, like, 3 months or so before the events of the show, would do something like this. He had less time to get used to his powers. He has less experience than this one. And he's already a much better Spider-Man by episode fucking 1. So I don't want to hear the inexperience argument. Moving on. Peter, later on in the movie, when he suspects similar criminals, he decides to take his phone for some reason, and rather than mute the damn thing, decides to just leave it on full, which the phone rings, and he gets himself caught, which not only lets the bad guys know that he's there, but he also fails to catch them because he sucks. During the reveal that Liz's dad is the Vulture, when they are in the car and Adrian has a gun pulled on Peter, even though the movie portrays this as though Peter has a disadvantage here, he really has the advantage. Vulture's gun doesn't have a silencer on it, meaning the gunshot would be very loud and would probably alert quite a few people to come see what's going on. 2. Peter is fast enough to avoid point-blank gunfire, and even if Vulture did pull the trigger, what exactly is he gonna do after? He probably isn't going to hit Peter. I doubt he's going to just start driving with Peter in the back seat. The gunshot would go off and would probably alert quite a few people to come see what's going on. Especially since Liz just left the car. It's highly likely that there's at least some people, students, teachers, whatever, who would be in earshot of the gun that they would come to see what's going on. Not to mention, before this whole point, when Peter was in Adrian's house and saw that, oh, you're the Vulture. You know what Peter could have done before he got in the car? He could have turned on some kind of recording software on his phone. That way, when he's in the car, he might be able to get some useful information out of Adrian. Especially when Peter, you know, kind of lets it slip that he's Spider-Man. You know, that would be a very smart thing for him to do. But instead, he doesn't do that, leaves his phone in the car, and has that act like some kind of tracker, even though, you know, it's the least effective thing he could have done in the moment. The last thing I'm going to bring up in regards to Peter's stupidity, because this is going on a little longer than I intended, is the part when Peter is in his homemade suit and confronts Vulture in his lair. He shows up, announces he's there, you know, letting Vulture know he's there. He takes the opportunity to web Vulture's left hand to the table, but for no reason at all decides to not web his other hand to the table. which allows Vulture to, you know, break free because he grabs a knife to undo the webs and, you know, somehow allows him to remote control the Vulture wings. Not to mention the fact that Peter is such a film buff, you would think that he would know about the whole make the roof cave in on a much stronger opponent thing. You know, that's a fairly common thing in movies. Maybe you can excuse it for the Vulture wings destroying one or two of the pillars, but after a while, you would think that Peter would be able to, you know, notice what's going on. To be absolutely fair to Tom Holland's incarnation, his Peter does actually do some things that are actually pretty smart sometimes. There are times when he is actually a pretty good Spider-Man. However, those scenes are very far and few between, and simply put, this video is already long enough as it is, so I'm not going to be bringing up those scenes where he is actually a good Spider-Man. Not to say that there aren't any, but this video is long enough as it is. Hi, Real Super Nintendo here. So, when looking through Homecoming, I only found like 2 scenes where Peter's actually acting like Spider-Man. Like, Peter Parker should be acting. And it's basically just a couple of scenes in the beginning montage when Peter is, you know, he's in the Stark suit and he's doing a couple of things. Like, some of the things he does are very Spider-Man-like. You know, like stopping the bike thief, giving the old lady directions, you know, stuff like that. And even though I already kind of complained about it, the scene in the bank where he's fighting the criminals in the Avengers masks, the beginning part where he just shows up, does nothing, and poses is very stupid, very unlike Spider-Man, but the actual fight itself is very Spider-Man-like. Even the type of jokes, for once, are actually pretty good for him. Because I don't bring it up throughout this entire video, but Tom Holland's jokes as Spider-Man are often kind of cringy, at least to me, because most of them are just movie references. But this is one that he is actually making to the people in the scene that actually kind of works as a joke. But, you know, there are some other scenes that people can argue are very Spider-Man-like, like him deciding to leave Liz at the dance to go stop Vulture and stuff. But I would argue that this is very unlike Spider-Man because the only reason he is in this situation to do that in the first place is because he was uncharacteristically stupid. As, like, uncharacteristically stupid for Spider-Man throughout the entire fucking movie up until this point. So, it's kind of hard for me to be like, oh, you're finally acting like Spider-Man, when the only reason he's doing this is because it's his fucking fault he's here in the first place. He could have stopped Vulture a dozen times over in this movie and just doesn't. Because he's being a fucking moron. Just... Anyway, I just wanted to say that outright, because there's not a whole lot here that is very Spider-Man-like, but scenes like what I mentioned before, and also the introductory scene for him in Civil War, do prove that Tom Holland can be a good Spider-Man if he's given good material. The problem with him is he's just not given good material, so yeah, it's not Tom's fault, it's whoever's writing these fucking movies. But anyway, back to the video.
Whoa, you're the Avengers! What are you guys doing here? Thor, Hulk, good to finally meet you guys.
Oh, you'd be more handsome in person. Oh, Iron Man! Hey, what are you doing robbing a bank? You're a billionaire. Hey! This feels so weird! Well, what is that thing? I'm starting to think you're not the Avengers!
Besides, him being a bad Spider-Man and being so monumentally stupid is a far more common occurrence. So, it's probably better if we focus on that.
A 70-centimeter square window.
The skies a bit clearer today, the rain has passed me by. I went and opened up the window again, I can't remember why. Besides that, I kept pinned to the walls, have flown out of the room. Soon I'll find my way to you.